First Peoples Radio presents Amplifying Voices, a project which aims to preserve, promote, and revitalize Indigenous languages and cultures. Beverly Amos is an Inuvialuk from the Western Arctic. She was born in Tuktoyaktuk Nunavut and grew up in Sachs Harbour. Beverly grew up with her Inuvialuktun language and hopes to inspire others to learn.
Kana ublumi atira Beverly Siliuyaq Amos. Kay mayunga inuving min Inuvialuit nunangani Inuvialuktunga Inuvialuyunga Okauchivut Inuvialuktun. Hello, my name is Beverly Siliuyaq Amos, and I'm in Inuvik at the moment, Inuvik Northwest Territories, and I live in the Inuvialuit settlement region. And I'm happy to be here. Our language is called Inuvialuktun. It means like. It's the language of the Inuvialuit people. We're a part of the group of Inuit people of Canada, and we're located in the Western Arctic. Inuvik is the hub of our region, and it is located in the Mackenzie Delta. And for my language, which I will mostly concentrate on talking about, is the language of the original people of the Western Arctic called the Inuvialuit. And they come from, like, say, around Herschel Island, right up to Tuktoyaktuk, and people call it Tuktoyaktuk. And then all along up the coast, northeastward, up to Pauladok, along the coast there. Palatuk, they call it. And across the ocean to Banks Island. One community on the island where I grew up is called Sachs Harbour, Inuvialuktun. It's Ikasuk, means a place to cross over to, because you have to cross the ocean to the Beaufort Sea to get to Ikahuk. And when I grew up there, first of all, I was born in Tuktoyaktuk, 1958, fall time. And then in 1960, my adoptive parents and I, we went on a schooner, the North Star of Herschel Island, it's called, my grandfather's schooner. We headed up by boat in the fall time, September, to Banks Island, and went to the settlement of Sachs Harbour, where my grandfather helped founded the place and had a store there. His name was Inuvialuk, Fred Carpenter. And my dad his name was David Nasugalok. He was originally from Tuktoyaktuk, and he married Fred Carpenter's daughter, Agnes. So her family was more familiar with the place. And so my dad moved up there with her and started a lifestyle of white fox trapping tiringan, Arctic fox, they call it. And that was our way of life for everybody that lived there. And it was a unique community, as it wasn't ancient like Tuktoyaktuk is, with people living around there. People moved there from Victoria Island, the Inuit and the people from Delta area on the mainland, whose descendants were from Alaska, the Inupiat, and then the coastal people of around Tuktoyaktuk area, the Inuvialuit. They all live in Sachs Harbour, Ikasuk. So that's growing up there is like was the start of language for me, hearing the different dialects, languages on a daily basis from the different groups of people. Inuit are more closer to the Central Arctic on Victoria Island, so they have their own language too. And to this day, I still can understand all other dialects that I grew up hearing from different people. So that was my education when I was growing up. Most of my peers, my age group and younger and older, were all away at residential school in Inuvik. So I stayed home with my parents and grandparents and community members, learning, just living by learning just by living, not in a classroom. I never started school till I was about 10 years old. It's when my parents finally let me go to residential school. I went for 1 year when I was 10. I didn't know how to read or write, but I knew lots of other stuff, learning from my people and my family and my parents, how to live in Inuvialuit way of life and customs and way of doing things and the language. And my grandmother, she was my best friend. Spent a lot of time with her. My mom's was really her aunt, but she raised her like a daughter. Because my mom's birth mother, her real mother passed away after my mom was born. So her aunt took her in and raised her. That's another part of our culture. We didn't have the government to put a stamp on who raises who and whose child is who. So people just took in family and friends, children, when they, for some reason, could not raise them themselves. So my grandmother talked to me in Inuvialuktun most of the time. Ananaga, o kakadi wakani Inuvialuktun. Ami o kausiri o kausit Inuvialuktun. Naguvialuktut pikpagivialukitka. Our language is so precious and I love it with all my heart. And we're having much difficulty in this day and age. 2025 is here and we are struggling to keep our language alive. Very few fluent speakers left. Every time one of our fluent speakers passes on, we've lost a very precious thing. It's now that I'm in my elderly age too, I just feel so lonely to hear speakers and people that know about what I saw and lived, because now it's a new age, new generation, and they do things a little differently than as each generation passes by. So I understand now my father-in-law when he said every time one of his friends or family passed on, he'd feel lonely. So it's just having that connection with people just by language as a main part of it. Because when you know a language, then if you hear somebody speaking and you could understand them, you automatically feel a connection to that person and to that group of people that you belong to. So it gives you a sense of belonging when you just to hear language. And I really think it's important to try to pass that along, because we were just like blinded for a while by thinking that only white man education is the only way to go, and you got to forget everything else. And that's where we lost ourselves. And there's that big void our people have that needs to be filled and stuffed up with our ways, because that's where people could, find their strength and their abilities that's been passed on from the higher powers given to you and from your ancestors, your family traits, their strengths, and their weaknesses too, that we have time to work on while we're alive. And there's, in the community here in Inuvik, there's about 3,000 people or so. They're building our Inuvialuktun organization, Indigenous group that we belong to, is building a child healing center, something like that. So that's gonna be a good opportunity for the children to reconnect with their past, so they could move to the future with confidence in themselves, knowing all their ancestors are there to back them up. And that's what we really need. And we need to include all our communities. There's Paulato has, I don't know, maybe 500 or 300 people. That same language as Inuvialuktun and Tuktoyaktuk and Ikasuk. It's the three communities that our people are mainly at, and there's lots here in Inuvik too. And Aklavik and Inuvik has descendants from Inupiaq in Alaska, which many of us are a part of too, in intermarrying and people intermixing with each other and become one nation. Inuviasuktunga, Okaga manalaw titiwan, ilanap daw ka ukapsa niya miyomi. I hope to speak again and talk to the people, and I'm thankful for the radio station for having me on their program. And we're just busy with programming to try to keep the language, different ways of through projects and classroom settings, and more that's coming along is on the land programs for people. That's where we think would really thrive with bringing back and teaching our culture and language, and even to other elders, middle-aged people, children, families. Families would work, I think, really well. This language learning starts from when you're really young. So those are the ones we have to try to teach so that they could teach the next generation of Inuvialuk people.
Amplifying Voices was developed in collaboration with over 60 Indigenous language keepers, experts, broadcasters, and academics, and is guided by an Indigenous advisory group comprising broadcasters, language experts, elders, and authors. The project is produced by Multicultural and the First Peoples Radio, and funded through the Radio Fund of Canada.